Hey everyone, I know it's been a few months, and unsurprisingly, my inability to focus on a task and newly developed crippling addiction to Voltron led my yearly top cartoons list to take a bit longer than expected. So because I want to get into the habit of uploading more, I decided to put together this compilation of my favorite bits from the videos I put out in 2024. It's something that I've wanted to do for the previous years I've been making videos, but I've just never gotten around to it until now. I've also added in a couple of new bits that weren't originally in any of these videos. The cartoons of 2024 videos should be done before the month ends, and after that, who knows? It's not like I have any prior video commitments that'll force me to spend months reliving one of the most aggravating television viewing experiences of my life. Anyways, enjoy this trip down memory lane. Welcome to another installment of Seasonal Rot Showcase, where I'm fucking mad! My god, what the hell happened here? How did things get so bad? The revival was doing so well too! Total drama, how could you do this to me? Let's just compare Millie and Caleb for a second. Millie is a self-conscious introvert with poor social skills, who sucks at the game, and is far more interested in finishing her book than actually winning. Meanwhile, Caleb is... nice. He has muscles, and he likes Priya. That's it. That's everything there is to Caleb as a character. It feels like Caleb immediately goes from shallow and manipulative to genuine and love-struck in seconds.
Nah, I mean, Priya's nice, but this is about the game. Strategy. I hope Priya isn't going home. She's actually kind of amazing. Smart, funny, pretty. Maybe there could be more than an alliance between us.
Seriously, before this moment, I was so certain that this arc would be about Caleb trying, but ultimately failing to manipulate Priya, because Damien figures out that Caleb's only using her, and after some drama, Priya sees that Caleb's full of shit and realizes that Damien's the guy for her, bruising Caleb's ego and leading him to go full villain. Since they were clearly setting Priya and Damien up in Season 1, did the writers just forget that? Why did they think we'd rather see Priya end up with this boring piece of wood than Damien, Total Drama's greatest character in all of his Giga Chad glory? Okay, so Priya and Caleb becoming a couple feels rushed and unearned when compared to Priya and Millie's friendship. Do they at least have a decent dynamic? No. His characterization as this super honorable, naive dude in the later episodes isn't treated like a new development either. They just act like Caleb was always like this, because who needs character consistency, am I right? God, they really did not know what to do with Caleb this season. Why couldn't you be Damien? Caleb isn't a character. He's just an object for Priya to fawn over. Again, I don't understand why they felt the need to make this nothing character Priya's love interest when Damien, a character with an actual personality who already had ship tease with her, was right there. What was the point in any of this? Total drama. I just don't understand you sometimes. While I think that Priya's still a perfectly likable character, she's far less engaging this season. Her whole thing of being a genre-savvy athlete is heavily downplayed, with Priya now being far less competent and mostly defined by her boring relationship with her boring boyfriend. Seriously girl, you can do so much better. Everything about Priya x Caleb is absolutely baffling to me. It is a bland, poorly paced, unearned, obnoxious romance, and I don't understand why it exists. I was genuinely more emotionally invested in Ripper x Axel, and that was a joke pairing. Like, everyone on the show knows from last season that Julia is a horrible person who can't be trusted, yet for some reason, they all decide to believe everything she says without question. The entire cast just blindly takes every word this awful, untrustworthy person says at face value, because apparently everyone's an idiot except for Julia. There's literally a point where Priya, who's supposed to be an expert in all things total drama, blindly falls for one of Julia's manipulations, and later admits that it was really stupid to not suspect that she was playing her. Like, they knew! The writers knew that Julia shouldn't have been able to manipulate Priya, but they still had her pull it off because they want to make Julia look smarter than she actually is, even if it means derailing Priya's character even further. Seriously girl, what did they do to you this season? What made Heather so great was that she wasn't just your typical mean girl. Heather was a fucking monster. She didn't just want to beat you, she wanted to destroy you. This is the girl who read Gwen's diary out loud on national television, made out with her her boyfriend right in front of her, and remorselessly backstab the closest thing she had to a friend. What horrible things does Julia do? She gives Priya a wedgie. Wow, that is so bad. You really are a grade A villain, Julia. Nasty stuff right there. Nasty stuff. The two of them honestly have a genuinely fun friendship. Yes. MK and Julia are friends.
You are vicious.
Stop it. You're making me blush.
Very good friends.
Why? Because you like me?
What? No, no, that is...
Just gals being pals.
Aw, if MK's brain drove a cool car, I'd date it.
I mean, what completely heterosexual, not at all sapphic girl hasn't said that about their female friend, who they have a completely platonic relationship? These two are gay as hell. So, they had to have known, right? There's no way that they wrote these two to be this gay by accident. You already gave us wholesome Yaoi last season. Now give us evil Yuri, damn it. So there was a point where it seemed like the season was going to give Julia some much needed depth by having her grow conflicted over having to compete against MK post-merger. But this conflict was dropped almost immediately after its introduction, and Julia instantly goes back to being a one-dimensional alpha bitch. Boy, that was a close one. For a second there, it looked like Julia was going to become an actual character and not just Where's Heather. And we can't have that, because giving Julia an arc might distract from the romance. My favorite part was when the show said in no uncertain terms that no one aside from Priya remotely gives a crap about Caleb. As it should be. Until then, I'd like you all to join me in praying for the downfall of Priya and Caleb's relationship. Long live Priya x Damien. Well, another year has come and gone. You know what that means.
Free ice cream!
No, you stupid idiot! It's time for my annual look out the window! Time to look out the window and the release of multiple animated films that were absolute game changers. And because I'm a YouTuber, I'm contractually obligated to remind you that they all have higher Rotten Tomato scores than Wish. Because Rotten Tomatoes may be terrible, but it makes for good clickbait. But you know what? None of that matters. Because my New Year's resolution was to maintain a more positive attitude. Because it was either that or go outside more. Which isn't really an option. So no more hopeless cynicism like in last year's list. No more doom and gloom. I'm not letting life bring me down anymore. We're going to ignore how we're all living in a capitalist hellscape for just a second and talk positively about the only good things to come out of this nightmare of a year without being a downer, even if it kills me. Like with last year's list, I was still open to see what this reimagining of Scooby-Doo had to offer. Then the trailers came out. They weren't very good. This has to be the worst first impression that a series has ever left on me. Every second of these trailers were nothing but the show cracking obnoxious meta joke after obnoxious meta joke, reveling in how edgy it is, daring the audience to be mad at it, and it just left me rolling my eyes. They made Velma look absolutely terrible. So I didn't watch it. Let me explain. So the title of this video might be a bit of a lie. You see, I actually ended up watching a total of 19 cartoons in 2023, which is a really awkward number, and Top 20 Cartoons of 2023 just had a much better ring to it. And because I've been working on this script since November, and I don't have the energy to find another whole series to watch, I decided that the best course of action for getting this list to 20 entries was to share my thoughts on this one show that I actually do have some things to say about, even though I've only seen and heard bits and pieces of it. I know I said that I'd be cool with a more adult take on Scooby-Doo, but I didn't mean filling it to the brim with gore, drugs, and a really weird locker room scene with near-nude 16-year-olds. Like, why? Why was that there? At the very least, it can't be half as obnoxious as all of the white nationalist grifters who've effectively drowned out all the sincere criticisms of Velma to rant about how woke it is and how they made Velma ugly by having her not be skinny, white, and straight, because Velma being skinny, white, and straight would somehow fix the overabundance of meta humor and the out-of-place try-hard edgelord tone. Then there's the whole will they or won't they thing that Hailey and Scott have going on. Now don't get me wrong, I like these two together, and their dynamic isn't grating, at least not yet, but their will they or won't they nonsense got really old really fast. There's also kind of a love triangle here with Scott dating this girl, Christine. Christine. I say kind of, because they don't really do a lot with this dynamic, and Christine ends up dumping Scott in like episode 10 anyways. So why did we even bother doing this song and dance to begin with? I mean, I'm glad they didn't drag out this love triangle and make it super angsty or whatever, but what was the point of any of this? You know, besides act as one of several obstacles to delay Hailey and Scott from inevitably becoming official. Seriously, why are shows still doing this with friends of the opposite gender? Why couldn't they just stay platonic? Better yet, just have them already dating by the start of the show. Why don't kids' cartoons ever take that option? Have we learned nothing from the travesty that was Starco? There's also unnecessary romance, complete with a love triangle, because of course there is. Granted, it's not as annoying as it is in Hailey's On It, since it doesn't distract too much from the plot, but it still feels totally unneeded, especially given that I don't find Emmelinda's relationships with either Edred or Winston to be particularly interesting. Again though, it could have been worse. At least it didn't make me hate most of the characters involved, like in Starverse. Oh wait, I've already passed my once a video limit on ragging on Starverses. At least it wasn't The Legend of Korra? A show that I've never watched? Is this anything? You know how this show makes Buster and Babs Bunny, no relation, twins when they were love interests in the original series? That's kind of weird. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, again, maybe it'd be higher up if Tiny Toon Adventures was a greater part of my childhood, but it's still a pretty good watch, despite the fact that it makes me think about college. I still have nightmares. It's too bad this show is so ridiculously short. The entirety of Pokemon Concierge can be finished in roughly an hour, which is a shame because with there being over 1,000 of them now, there were no shortage of stories you could tell about Haru and her Psyduck buddy, vibing with different Pokemon staying at the resort. It also would have given us more time with Haru's boss and co-workers, who don't really get much to do here. They have so little of a presence that I couldn't even tell you their names, let alone anything about their personalities. Hey, future Sawkman here. So in the time since I recorded this segment, more episodes of Pokemon Concierge were ordered, basically rendering this complaint about the length almost entirely null and void. I am pointing this out just to remind y'all of how f***ing long this video has taken for me to make. I am only a quarter of the way finished making it on the day I'm recording this, and I am already exhausted. Now back to your previously scheduled ramblings. My God, this was such a bad idea. I just wish that this season had more than 5 episodes. Just another reminder that Cartoon Network is still struggling. A fact that I'm choosing not to dwell on in my pitiful attempts at staying positive this video. Just gonna pretend that everything doesn't hurt. And that cliffhanger ending, man, I can't wait to see how it gets resolved in 2044. I say this as a joke, but I don't think I need to remind you of the state of streaming. And I was so close to making it through this section without complaining about the entertainment industry. What is wrong with me? I really think Tess needs to come up more in discussions about fierce black women in media. Like, this woman not just beat down the alien colonizer lady trying to destroy her planet, but turned her into boots that she wears. That is beyond metal. All in all, My Dad the Bounty Hunter is a really good time, especially during its second season. It has everything you could ask for. Humor, heart, action, and a Maya and the Three reference. It's a fun show that definitely deserves more attention. Oh, and also, Keith David plays a sexy Catman. Come on, furries, get on that. I know you've watched worse shows for hot cat people. I think that there's a has-been hotel joke in there somewhere, but I really don't want to contribute to the discourse surrounding that show. Namely the main conflict of Steven and Angela trying to find fulfillment in life and struggling to turn their creative passions into a viable career, which really resonated with me for reasons that should be very obvious. Like, comment, and subscribe, by the way. Hey guys, did you know that Disney Plus doesn't just make increasingly mediocre Marvel and Star Wars shows? Believe it or not, if you look really hard, you'll actually find original content in there, and some of it's actually good. Although I can't say I blame you for not knowing that, because God knows that Disney will not promote anything that isn't a big franchise. Probably the most memorable thing about this episode is how the main character looks like a Biz Pro fan child. This one character has a Sans Undertale eye. I just find that funny. What on earth is it about this show that welcomed literally all of the worst takes imaginable? The discourse surrounding this show has effectively killed any doubt I had that basic media literacy is dead. Seriously, I will never forgive how the internet treated Lois, because how dare she get upset that the man she was developing an intimate relationship with was hiding this double life from her even after giving him multiple chances to fess up. Oh, but that's not how Jazz reacted when she learned Danny's secret identity. Yeah, it's almost like Lois and Jazz are two very different characters with very different relationships with the heroes. In fact, it'd be really fucking weird if Jazz reacted the way Lois did, given that she and Danny are teenage siblings. But Lois would never go as far as to throw herself off a building in order to prove Clark's Superman. You know, except for all the times she did. And would you look at that? When Clark apologized and properly communicated with her in the following episode, Lois understood his mindset and the two made up. Do y'all want more serialized cartoons or not? Because you guys really don't seem to understand the concept of a storyline spanning multiple episodes and waiting to see how it all plays out before making definitive statements about the narrative in its entirety. Gee, it's almost like there are misogynistic so-called comic book fans out there who will do anything to blindly vilify a woman character. Then again, what was I expecting from the same idiots who think that Rick and Morty invented the Alliance of Alternates trope? The Council of Loises is a take on Marvel's Council of Reeds, which was in turn a heroic counterpart to the Council of Kangs, who debuted in the mid-80s. And don't even get me started on how the racists act about Jimmy. How can you claim that your lame-ass whitewashed edits are fixing him when you're not giving him his iconic bow tie? You absolute... The only character adaptation that didn't really work for me was Slade, who's portrayed as a shonen pretty boy here, and not the irredeemably depraved old man that he is. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If you're offering me a Slade who isn't an irredeemable monster, then I don't want him. I'm not even sure why he's even in this show when Bloodsport, a mercenary who's an actual Superman villain, was right there. James Gunn did not bring this character into relevancy just for you to do him like this. Come on. But I really would appreciate it if cartoons realized that we have more than one hairstyle. And no, that is not giving you the go-ahead to give him the Killmonger cut. I just want variety. Carol eventually breaks her work routine to go surfing around the world to find that perfect wave, but when she's satisfied with her trip, she goes back to work and it's not seen as a bad thing, because that's just what makes Carol happy. Hey, future Sawkman again. So in editing, it came to my attention that Carol indeed did not decide to take up surfing after lying to her parents about it, and that entire episode was nothing more than an extended version of that lie. So what I thought was meant to complement the main themes of the show was just me being a fucking idiot. Carol having an entirely different eye color that episode should have been a giveaway, but I guess I just didn't notice when writing the script. Why am I like this, man? Okay, now back to your regularly scheduled idiocy. God, I'm so fucking tired. Side note, Carol and the End of the World is the single greatest advertisement Applebee's could ever ask for. You know your show's good when you can make a damn Applebee's feel like a place you would willingly go to. To put it simply, the End of the World is freaking terrifying, and not everyone wants to spend their last days on Earth doing these extreme, exciting things. For some, continuing to live a simple, mundane life is more than enough. It's a valid form of happiness. And as an autistic man who's very much comfortable with things remaining a certain way, this message honestly felt kind of validating to me. While the many ways that it diverges from the source material has made this show controversial in some circles, and by some circles, I mean cowards, people are overlooking a damn work of art. This show right here is the best thing to ever come out of Disney Channel. Gravity Falls, The Owl House, the show with Marcy Wu in it, they cannot compare to the absolute greatness that is Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Oh, but it's Marvel, and the MCU's gotten so bad. Now look at me. Look at me. The MCU could never. Another great thing about Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is how it tackles black topics in really creative, inventive ways. Like in Hair Today, Gone Tomorrow, where a comment from one of her classmates causes Unoa to become self-conscious about her natural hair, which leads to her losing her hair and said hair becoming a supervillain. Or like Mother Like Moon Girl, where Moon Girl fights back against the gentrification of the LES, which by the way, has one of the most powerful sequences in the entire show. Like damn, this show goes so hard. I have never seen these kinds of stories get told in children's shows before, and I love that black kids today get to grow up watching strong, uncompromisingly black shows like this one. There's even a later episode where Lunella has a realistic depiction of a panic attack. I thought you people loved that. Why aren't you watching Moon Girl? What? Are you afraid it's too silly? Afraid of shows with lighthearted episodic adventures? Is that it, cowards? Is that it? You know, with how often I use clips from the show and music from the games, it's weird that I haven't talked all that much about Adventure Time on this channel, considering that it's straight up my favorite thing ever. There honestly isn't a single piece of media that has managed to elicit the same range of emotions for me that Adventure Time has. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I don't think I would have the same love for animation that I do today if it weren't for Adventure Time. This series showed me what the medium was truly capable of. It can be funny, exciting, heartwarming, creative, thought-provoking, horrifying, soul-crushing, or even just plain weird. Adventure Time means everything to me. Following the end of Adventure Time, Simon, like Fiona, has become sad and aimless. Sure, he's free from the Crown's influence, but Fiona and Cake asks the question, what now? What does Simon do in a world that's strange and alien to him? What purpose does he serve? More importantly though, after 13 years, Fiona and Cake finally led Simon Petrikov to reach the Tumblr sexy man status that he always deserved. Seriously, where were you guys on that? This man was Tumblr sexy man material even back when he was just Ice King. Cowards! Cowards, all of you! Then there's the whole multiverse angle. While pretty much everyone agrees that the idea of the multiverse has long since been overdone, Fiona and Cake handles it brilliantly, and more than earns its place alongside Everything Everywhere All at Once and Across the Spider-Verse as a part of the holy trinity of fully justified 2020's multiverse stories. This isn't your run-of-the-mill multiverse plot, where the concept only amounts to, what if everyone were pirates? Or, remember this iteration of a character from your childhood? Well, here you go. The what ifs Fiona and Cake bring to the table are genuinely captivating. A universe where Ice King and PB's roles are swapped. A universe where the Vampire King raised a young Marceline instead of Simon. A universe where the freaking witch won. These are all such fascinating, fun, fully realized ideas that the show executes masterfully. Simon comes out of this realizing the value in his own life. These worlds show that despite his faults, despite his mistakes, Simon isn't a failure. He's a good man who left a positive impact, and who would be a worse place without him. He doesn't need to throw his life away in order to give it meaning. As a depressed 27-year-old who has no idea what to do with his life, seeing a show that was so important to me in my adolescence tell a story about these two adults who've hit a rut, eventually find meaning in their lives, is something I think I really needed to see. Fiona and Cake is an absolute triumph of a show. It does everything that a good sequel should. It takes the ideas of the previous installment and expands upon them in a compelling way that makes me appreciate the characters and world more than I already did. It's funny, it's mature, it's creative, it's weird, it's everything I could ever ask for in a follow-up to Adventure Time. And the fact that we're going to get more makes me absolutely ecstatic. Fiona and Cake is a fantastic show, a worthy continuation of Adventure Time, and my favorite cartoon of 2023. And there we have it. Those were my top cartoons of 2023. Now admittedly, things were a bit touch and go with the whole positive attitude thing, but I think that this little journey we've been on for the past, oh dear god, nearly 90 minutes, has ultimately left me feeling more hopeful about humanity. Not by much, but any world that continues to give us Adventure Time can't be completely horrible. Or at least that's what I'm going to tell myself so I don't have to go outside. This list has left me very tired and I would like to go to bed now. So here's to 2023, a year that brought us so much great animation in spite of the industry's nonsense and the world inching ever closer to total societal collapse. I can now say with complete confidence that Hailey's on It has quite easily the worst implementation of an overarching narrative that I've ever seen in a kid's cartoon. Now to all the Hailey's on It stands watching, just put your torches and pitchforks down for a second and let me explain. This isn't me saying that it's the worst kids cartoon with an ongoing narrative. I think we all know what show holds that title. But rather, Hailey's on It is the first kids cartoon I've seen that I think is made actively worse because it has a serious overarching story. The tone and writing style of Hailey's on It simply doesn't lend itself well to a semi-serious story finale where the future is on the line. Hailey's on It is a lighthearted, fairly grounded, mostly episodic animated sitcom. The very notion of the world being at stake here feels at odds with this show's entire vibe. But wait, I hear you ask, how can that be when it's a show about time travel? Well, that's the thing, hypothetical questioner. It kind of isn't. The only sci-fi element that feels remotely necessary here is the future scientist lady, given that she's the one who kicks off the plot to begin with. With that being said, if she were removed from the show, along with the rest of the fantastical elements and the saving the world stuff, and this was simply a show about an anxious girl who decided one day to finish this massive list of things that she always wanted to do just because, what would really change? It almost comes across like the time travel plot was some sort of weird executive mandate, and the crew was actively trying to distance the show from the sci-fi premise as much as feasibly possible. I am almost certain that this wasn't the case, but that would explain so much. Now I know what you're probably thinking. What does all of this have to do with the season 1 finale? What could have happened there that further exasperated my issues with there being a serious ongoing plot in Hailey's On It? Well, you see, up until that point, I genuinely thought that the world being in danger was just a complete lie made up by the future lady. Now, if you saw my top 20 cartoons of 2023 video, which odds are you probably didn't, my god, the algorithm fucked me on that one. You'll remember how I explained that many people like myself theorized that the future scientist lady was actually a future Hailey, with this whole saving the world thing being nothing more than a ruse to push her younger self to achieve all the things she regretted not doing. In that video, I was super confident that this was going to be the big twist of Hailey's On It, to the point where I was complaining about how obvious the show made it that this was the direction it was heading. I mean, it just made sense, with how clearly they telegraphed the future lady's connection to Hailey and how the Chaos Bots are basically non-entities who don't feel threatening in the slightest. It stood to reason that they weren't actually a threat to the future and were merely obstacles created by the future lady to give Hailey that extra push she needed. My surefire belief that this was the endgame of Hailey's On It and that it would all come together once the series started to show its full hand was the only thing that kept me from 100% dismissing its ongoing plot as poorly conceived and out of place. As it turns out though, I was completely wrong. While the future lady being connected to Hailey is still on the table, the season finale all but confirmed that the future lady didn't create the Chaos Bots, with it giving the very strong implication that they were actually made by AC, this kid no one cares about who has a one-sided rivalry with Hailey, meaning that the silly slice of life sitcom about time travel, where the time travel plot is mostly an afterthought, actually had serious stakes to it this entire time. This show was never setting up anything clever or subversive, and now that I know this, I just kind of don't have a reason to care anymore. I mean, what's left for me to look forward to in this unfocused, out-of-place time travel story that I don't care about? Seeing if Hailey will finally kiss Scott next season? Because that whole plotline hasn't long overstayed its welcome.
Well, don't just stand there. Kiss her!
This is so genuinely baffling to me. I can't think of a single time where a cartoon's high-stakes ongoing narrative felt so out of place that I straight up wouldn't allow myself to believe that this is what they were actually doing. I literally stood there, waiting for the show to say psych, only to set myself up for a complete disappointment. I just don't understand this show. Why put an ongoing sci-fi plot where the world is in danger in a show like Hailey's On It, only for most of the episodes to ignore the sci-fi and serialized elements in favor of being a grounded sitcom entirely disconnected from the conflict? I consider Hailey's On It to be a letdown, and a prime example of how not to do a quote-unquote story-driven cartoon.
He said it! He said it!
I really do hope that Hailey's On It gets a second season and is ultimately able to tell its full story. It's what both the show's staff and its fanbase deserve. I mean, it's not like its second season could go down the path of Star Versus, where the show's slowly overtaken by an obnoxious, angsty, dragged out, will they or won't they love story. Oh. Right. Please, dear God, don't let Hailey commit genocide on the future. Shadow Shadow is easily one of the show's highlights, and between this, the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, and his most recent appearance in the IDW comics, it really does seem like Sega's finally letting people write Shadow as an actual character again, and not just a slightly less insufferable version of Sasuke Uchiha, who is the worst character in all of fiction, and there's nothing anyone can say to convince me otherwise. My god, Sakura, you deserve so much better. Back on topic, while we don't get much of her backstory here, I'm sure that later seasons will give us more insight into Rusty Rose's character that'll lead to a satisfying arc with her. On an unrelated note, have I ever told you guys how much I love Tempting Fate? The closest thing we get to an explanation as to what the Chaos Council is supposed to be is this vague, cryptic crap about how they've always existed. I have no idea what that's supposed to mean, but I'm guessing we'll get a more proper answer in the later seasons. I'm also a really big fan of obvious foreshadowing. I have no idea why Sega would claim that Sonic Prime shares the same canon as the games, when it's very apparent the show wasn't written with the intent of tying it into the main continuity. Sega clearly wants the series to go back to the more serious, sincere tone of 2000s era Sonic, while putting in a greater effort to make the setting more coherent, but trying to pass Sonic Prime as canon just spits in the face of those efforts. While I wouldn't call the show straight up juvenile like some critics have, there is at least some darkness in characters like Nine and Rusty. Sonic Prime's tone is that of your typical Saturday morning cartoon, and is much less mature than the likes of Sonic Frontiers and Sonic IDW. Plus, unlike the comics, there are a lot of little continuity errors in Prime that makes it hard for it to fit into the canon of the games. Like how Sonic says he's never encountered an Eggman robot that wasn't powered by Flicky, when those became commonplace from Sonic Heroes onward. Or later on, where he acts like he's never encountered a robot knockoff of himself. Apparently, Ian Flynn and the Sonic War team attempted to point out these inconsistencies to the show's staff, but for one reason or another, their concerns were ignored. Seriously, poor Ian. He tried his very best to have Prime make sense in canon, only for the internet to blame the continuity errors on him. Now granted, Prime not being in line with canon doesn't really affect its quality, but it bothers me, damn it. I'd say season 2 is an overall step down from the first season. That being said, with the way it ends, it's very possible that season 3 could be the best season yet. You know, so as long as the previous season's pacing issues are ironed out, stuff like the Chaos Council gets a proper explanation, and the resolution isn't this total cop-out that ends up making this entire show pointless.
Foreshadowing is a literary device in
It's just a constant pattern of Nine wrecking the heroes getting the upper hand, Sonic trying to reason with Nine to no avail, and then the cycle starts anew. Calm down, Nine. We're your friends. Shut up, Sonic. I'll kill you. Oh, and were you hoping for an explanation on what the Chaos Council are? Too bad. Their origins are never explained. There are just 5 Eggmans of different ages living in one universe because reasons. Meanwhile, Rusty Rose, a character who was filled with so much intrigue and mystery, also never has her origins explored, and her arc comes to a really lackluster end, with Rusty realizing that, apparently, the Flicky inside of her wasn't actually powering her, and that it was just a symbol of her oppression or some crap, and she doesn't need it because she's her own person or something, and man was this character completely squandered. The show could have done something really cool, like having Rusty sacrifice herself to save the Flicky inside of her like Gamma in Sonic Adventure, but instead, we have this nothing, anticlimactic, wet fart of a conclusion for a character that could have been so amazing. There's a point where Nine sees Sonic taking the time to formulate a plan with Batten,
My career is over. All those years clawing my way up. All the people I've stepped on. Wasted.
Then there's the ending, which has Sonic restoring its world and returning it to right before he shattered the Paradox Prism, with Shadow teleporting it away. Wait, so they prevented the Paradox Prism from being shattered, the thing that created the Shadow Spaces to begin with. Did Sonic and Shadow just erase those universes? Honestly, I wanted to give a more extreme reaction, but I already spoiled the ending for myself months ago, and this season left me too worn out to actually care all that much. Honestly, I'm almost disappointed that the implications of the ending weren't as horrific or dire as people made it out to be. At the very least, a slap in the face Star vs. X ending would have made me feel something in this boring as sin season. Apparently, there's supposed to be an IDW miniseries based on the show, so maybe it'll end up clearing some things up, but I honestly feel so burned out by Sonic Prime at this point that I don't really care enough to find out. Are you too grappling with how the latest Tails tube cemented Sonic Prime as a part of the canon, and that we're completely powerless to stop it? Feel free to discuss in the comments below if you like. Maybe even consider subscribing if you want to hear more of me rambling on about cartoons. Anyways, here's hoping that the next Sonic series doesn't disappoint fans like Sonic Prime. Right. That was a thing. Being a Sonic fan is suffering. As a kid, I thought crossovers were quite literally the hypest thing imaginable. Just seeing characters I loved that were supposed to exist in completely different settings, suddenly being able to interact and bounce off of each other, was a novelty that always felt special. Even today, despite my cynical adult brain telling me to feel otherwise, I still can't help but get a bit of a serotonin boost from crossovers, even when they're just shallow cameos. Yes, that one cameo in Deadpool 3 was an obvious joke meant to pander to my nostalgia, but I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I didn't crack up when I watched it on my phone in a packed theater. Legally. The way God intended. John Levy being a Zionist doesn't bother me at all. The Jimmy Timmy Power Hour was already mind-blowing to me as a kid, so you can only imagine how unreal it felt seeing that commercial for Nicktoons Unite for the first time. This, right here, was everything kids growing up in the 2000s dreamt of. And man, when I finally got to play it... This is great! Now this may look like a cheap license game, because it is a cheap license game. Look, I was 8 years old. I didn't know what made video games good or bad. I didn't care that it was cheap and rushed, or that I couldn't make it past the Crocker fight.
You're in my world now, Timmy Turner. And you'll die in my world.
Now we have been getting closer to that Unite era of Nicktoons games with All-Star Brawl, specifically the second game, but it just doesn't quite have that feel of being this epic team-up. Come on, Nick. Give these developers the budget for Subspace Emissary level cutscenes. Give me flashy cinematics of Jenny, Donatello, and Garfield fighting Fire Lord Ozai. You'd make all of the money. On November 5th, 2021, we were graced with the first installment of none other than... Portal Chase. Yay. This leads them to go through different challenges that serve as homages to a plethora of video games. Why? Honestly, I'm not sure. Gaming has literally nothing to do with any of the plots. I personally suspect that this was an attempt to kind of get people to associate Portal Chase with Nicktoons Unite. I mean, those were video games about Nicktoons saving the world, and this is a web series about Nicktoons saving the world while being put through video game scenarios. That's kind of similar, right? Or maybe they only did this because kids like video games. That's a strong possibility, but I personally prefer my theory. Not only do none of these character shows have anything in common that will make a team-up feel remotely natural or exciting, but they just don't lend themselves well to a Nicktoons Unite-esque story. Now, this character lineup would be fine if they wanted to do something like Say Uncle, where there are no stakes and the characters are just kind of hanging out, but taking SpongeBob, Lincoln, Ronnie Ann, and Henry Danger, and having them team up to fight a villain just feels forced. The Loud House is a slice-of-life show starring Lincoln Loud, a 12-year-old boy who has all the powers and abilities of a 12-year-old boy. This kind of character just doesn't work in a plot about fighting evil. Yeah, the movies have stakes or whatever, and he's like a secret agent in the second one, but no one ever wanted the Loud House to have stakes. Lincoln's the everyman dealing with the tribulations of living in a large household. Putting him in these kinds of situations completely misses the appeal of Lincoln's character, and by extension, the Loud House. Even then, what exactly is Lincoln over here bringing to the team? What does this ordinary child have to offer when SpongeBob is a literal god? All I'm saying is that there's a reason why they cut him from Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. The issue is though, and I'm not sure if you knew this, but Henry Danger isn't a Nicktoon, leading him to be way less interesting than the Unite Nick characters as a result of live-action shows having far greater limits in terms of scope and creativity. I mean, unless you count The Adventures of Kid Danger, a show that looks like it was made on a budget of $10 and a handshake, and something I believe Nickelodeon would rather we all forget about. This is like if they put real-life singer JoJo Siwa in a Nickelodeon kart racer game. Sure, you could do that, but why? Did kids want this? Did they want this live-action character teaming up with Lincoln Loud? Also, JoJo Siwa is a playable character in Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2. That's a thing that actually happened. And again, the show's main character was cut from the sequel because no one wanted to play as Link and Loud. There's only so much you can do with a team up that has Link and Loud in it. I honestly don't know why I'm being so mean to Link in this video. But I actually like the Loud House. I don't know. Link is just such a fun character to bully, I can't explain it. Which just makes me wonder why they thought Portal Chase was a good idea. That is, unless Nickelodeon's sole motivation behind Portal Chase wasn't to make something that would stick with kids until adulthood, but just to get something out there with their most popular, relevant characters that would easily get views. Which can't be the case, because that could mean that the Nicktoons Unite games didn't come from a place of love and creative passion either. And how could you say that about a series that gave us moments like
Patrick! Watch out for that jellyfish harvester! Patrick, no!
oh my god. Yeah, the weird thing about this episode is, holy crap, is Sandy doing the Sonic Adventure pose? Yeah, the weird thing about this first installment is that the main team doesn't have Ronnie Ann, no doubt because the Constant Grandes wouldn't premiere for another year. Instead, the fourth member of the Portal Chasers is another SpongeBob character, which is even lamer than having both Lincoln and Ronnie Ann. Yeah, they both share the same setting, but at least they're the leads of their own shows. Meanwhile, Sandy wouldn't get anything resembling a spin-off until this year, and my god, I wish she didn't. Seriously though, Rise of the TMNT was literally only 2 weeks away from premiering. Why not just use one of the turtles, you know, for brand synergy and junk? Like, they were clearly desperate for the Portal Chasers to be a quartet, but apparently not desperate enough to include the best iteration of the TMNT. Cowards! Cowards, all of you! Sandy, despite this episode introducing her as a member of the team, decides to sit this one out for no good reason, and isn't seen again for the remainder of the Portal Chase franchise. Kind of a dick move there, Sandy. It's not a problem for the Portal Chasers, though, because now that her spinoff is on the air, Ronnie Ann can immediately replace her. Granted, it's a bit of a downgrade to go from a master martial artist / brilliant scientist to a child who can skateboard good, but the Portal Chasers don't have time to be picky. That monster Plankton has the secret formula. Lives are on the line, man! Their old foe, Dragon Boy Band, has returned, having formed an alliance with iconic Nickelodeon villains, the Flying Dutchman, Mr. Crocker, King Goobot, and I'm pretty sure that's that one Henry Danger villain played by Ariana Grande's brother. I know I could easily look up the character's name, but I honestly have too much self-respect to Google the name of the main villain of Henry Danger. And yes, I know that's rich coming from the grown man talking about Portal Chase, but I have to draw the line somewhere. As it turns out, there actually is a game based on Portal Chase, and surprisingly, it isn't a microtransaction-riddled mobile game, but instead, an entirely free Flash game. And because for some reason I've committed myself to talking about everything Portal Chase related this video, I have no choice but to cover it here. I swear I wouldn't have made this stupid video if I knew Portal Chase was more than just a 3D animated series. The first game, Loud Maze, sees you having to navigate an enclosed area without touching the boundaries or any of the obstacles for as long as you can. Now if you're wondering why I don't seem to be moving at all in the gameplay footage, it's because the down and right arrow keys on my laptop don't work. And for some ungodly reason, this game makes you use the arrow keys to move, as opposed to the far more popular WASD, rendering the first minigame completely unplayable for me. And I guess the game devs weren't anticipating players hitting the right boundary on the very first level, because once you do, the game just kind of shits itself, and you're left stuck until you exit to the main menu. God, everything's gone wrong! Holy crap, why? What kind of jive-ass game doesn't have WASD support? It's rock, paper, scissors. This couldn't be the best they could have done. Henry Danger dabs. That is quite literally the most interesting thing about this game. And you want to know the best part about all of this? There is no ending, no unique animation, no special clear screen, just the same level clear screen as before, only instead of good job, it says congratulations. The game just keeps on going? Like, no! No, there's not even a, no! Like, there's not even a proper ending? There's straight up no ending. The game doesn't end. The game doesn't end. You couldn't give me a congratulations screen game? You couldn't give me that? Like, am I not worth that to you? A single screen? Oh god, this was such a waste of time. I'm so sorry. Like, this is... Oh god. Why did I choose to do this? I am so sorry, everyone. Man. This is gonna be the worst video ever. This is what I choose to do for a hobby. However, this turns out to be a ruse, as this wasn't really Lisa, but the villain behind the slime's disappearance disguised as her. Said villain being a creature known only as the Slime Monster. As massive of a twist this is, I'm honestly more surprised that Henry here was able to type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a keypad without the number 4 on it. Henry Danger responds to this revelation by claiming he thought Lisa was acting sus. To which I say, no you didn't, Henry. You were fooled just like everyone else. You just wanted an excuse to use hip lingo in an attempt to pander to kids today. And judging by the video's view count, this worked perfectly, but that word makes people from my generation irrationally angry for some reason, and I demand that this cheap video for children stop pandering to children. Next, our heroes end up chasing the slime monster through the Loud household, with him escaping their grasp once more, but not before trapping SpongeBob, Ronnie Ann, and Henry behind a force field, leaving Lincoln to free them by playing Tetris for a solid 30 seconds. Just riveting stuff. After that bit of pulse-pounding excitement, the portal chasers enter the world of Hey Arnold, getting help from Arnold and Gerald to launch pigeons at the slime monster in a spoof of Angry Birds. No doubt disappointing the Pigeon Man to no end.
He said it! He said it!
Why did I decide to make a video on this? What made me think this was a remotely good idea? I could have obeyed the almighty algorithm and made a video on something like Primos or whatever. But no, here I am, making a video on Portal Chase. This is time I could have spent watching Voltron. What am I doing with my life? Oh, well, they mentioned cake, like the meme in Portal. The cake is a lie. That one, that's funny. That's so funny. That's so f***ing funny. Like, because it's a reference to a thing I know, and that's all this show is. It's just references to other things. It's nothing. What? It's just references to things I know. Why aren't Danny and Jimmy a part of the Portal Chasers? One's a superhero of a far higher caliber than Henry Danger, and the other is a genius who's able to bring the dead back to life. I feel like these two are just a bit more qualified to protect the multiverse than freaking Lincoln Loud. Also, where's Timmy in all of this? They do an Avengers Endgame and summon all the characters they've encountered throughout their epic quest. Most of them don't do jack shit. Lisa and the TMNT at least do their share, but everyone else just kind of stands there. I mean, I get Arnold and Gerald not joining the battle, on account of them being average children and all. In fact, I'm not entirely sure how Ronnie Ann expected these two to contribute to the fight here, but what are Danny and Jimmy doing just hanging around? You two are among the most powerful beings in the Nickelodeon multiverse, and you can't be bothered to do anything here? You can handle the motherfucking Magoo, but a giant Slugman is above your pay grade. The baby does more to contribute to the villain's defeat than you two. The super genius with all manner of high-tech weaponry, and the ghost superhero. Do better, guys. So who knows, maybe in that time, Nickelodeon managed to make a more worthwhile Nicktoons crossover series that will actually stick with people. Oh my goodness! Good lord, what am I looking at? What is this YouTube Kids story of Undertale bullcrap? Lincoln, I'm sorry. I swear I wouldn't have made fun of you if I knew the accident left you this disfigured. No! 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 Someone please take it away! Take it away! Well, that was traumatizing. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be reliving my vastly superior cheap Nickelodeon crossover. God, kids today don't know what they're missing. Actually, Voltron Legendary Defender was one of the most loved cartoons of the 2010s, attracting a very sizable, compassionate fanbase that never acted up in any way. Not one bit. Voltron is just a really good, really well-written villain, at least up until the last few episodes of Season 6. You see, it's revealed that, surprise surprise, Voltron is evil and has been harvesting Altian's quintessence for the greater good. And shortly after Aurora calls him out on his crap when they meet again following the reveal, Voltron just completely loses his mind and basically becomes an entirely different character. Apparently, the time he spent in the quintessence dimension altered his mind, even though he seemed pretty sane literally minutes prior. Like, he literally goes from calm and rational to this raving lunatic boasting about how he'll destroy Voltron and the Galar Empire the second Aurora compares Voltron to his father. Like, I get that's a sore spot for him, but the way that it immediately caused him to go full supervillain feels so abrupt and clumsy when it really didn't need to be.
I want to harness the power of the quintessence field to better the universe, just like I said. Nothing has changed.
A few minutes later,
I'm going to start a new Altea, an Altea that will never know of Princess Allura or King Alfor, nor will they know of the Lions of Voltron. All they'll know is me, their great leader.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Okay, so this is really lame, but considering how the show, up until this point, portrayed Voltron as this genuine, well-intentioned extremist, it stands to reason that he'll come back and return to his senses, either going back to being this ruthless, charismatic manipulator, or getting a redemption of some sort. I mean, there's no way that's the note Voltron goes out on. They wouldn't just take this character they were building up as this sympathetic, morally complex anti-villain, then decide at the last second, no, he's just an irredeemable monster, and kill him off. Guess what ends up happening to him? Okay, so as much as it sucks that they fumbled the bag with Voltron, maybe his replacement will be at least half as interesting. Oh, look, the opposite happened. Who would have guessed? It feels like the only reason why Sendak's even here is that the writers for some reason wanted to save Hagar for the final season, and this loser was the only other villain they had left. I'm sorry, but this man just gives off mad filler villain vibes. Finally, we have Hagar, or Hanerva as it were, who makes perfect sense as the final villain given her prominence and importance to the show's lore. So points to Voltron, Legendary Defender, for having the good sense to not make some one-dimensional, lame, unimportant character no one ever cared about the show's final boss. Wait, why am I giving Voltron props for this? No show would be stupid enough to do something like, oh... I think that Voltron is just a bit too forgiving of her, given the sheer scale of her atrocities. Like, yeah, it sucks that her family lost their minds and are all dead, but that doesn't change that Hanerva destroyed entire planets and was more than willing to sacrifice infinite universes solely for the sake of her own happiness, and then threatened to destroy her new reality when she didn't get what she wanted out of it. What makes it even more frustrating, though, is that the narrative treats Hanerva with much more sympathy than Lotor, despite Lotor being a genuine, well-intentioned extremist, while Hanerva's actions are largely self-serving. Yet this person, who is willing to tear apart all reality, gets to redeem herself, while Lotor was treated like a lost cause. Makes it make sense! What kind of hackneyed show would just have a character do such awful crap, then suddenly decide that they're redeemable at the last second, and have the hero forgive her? Oh... Adam was seriously hyped up by the Voltron crew. He was all over the marketing for Season 7, and given Voltron's sizable LGBT fanbase, many were understandably excited to see one of the main characters involved in a same-sex relationship. And what did all of this build-up amount to? 2 scenes. Adam ended up being in 2 scenes in the entire show. The first being Shiro and Adam having a brief interaction, where Adam worries about Shiro's well-being before, I guess, breaking up with him. That's written in a way that portrays their relationship in such a vague light that if you weren't aware of this season's marketing, it'd be understandable if you left that scene not realizing that those two were supposed to be a couple. Then there's Adam's second and final scene, where he's unceremoniously killed off. Oh, but wait, it's okay, because at the end of the series finale, Shiro marries and has a gay kiss with... some guy. Finally seeing how badly Voltron utterly botched things with the Shiro-Adam ship with my own 2 eyes was a mystifying experience. All throughout Season 7, I was just thinking to myself, this couldn't have been the best they could have done. You have to keep in mind that this season came out in 2018. 3 years after Steven Universe's Jailbreak premiered and opened up the floodgates for LGBT representation in children's media. To put things into perspective, 2018 was the year where Ruby and Sapphire had their big gay wedding. Bubbling, after years of teasing, finally became official, and She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, one of the gayest cartoons on Netflix, premiered. And even when you ignore all of the great LGBT rep we've gotten since, Voltron's handling of Shiro's sexuality still looks pathetic. Hell, keeping Adam as this nothing character, and having the text in the epilogue say that he apparently didn't die, turned up sometime after the finale, then married Shiro, would have been more satisfying than having him hook up with some rando. Yes, that'd still be hackneyed writing, but at least Adam would still be a character that Shiro had an interaction with. At least Shiro would be with a character whose name we know. Plus, considering the quality of Season 8, this level of writing wouldn't have felt remotely out of place at this point in Voltron. Azor, despite being important to Zethrid's arc, is almost a non-entity this season. Azor doesn't really interact with anyone, and outside of Zethrid, no one really acknowledges her presence in any meaningful capacity. I kid you not, Azor only has a single line of dialogue in the entirety of this season, and it's the word no. What is happening here? Apparently, the reason why the writing for them is so weird here is because Azor and Zethrid were originally supposed to get killed off. The initial plan was to have Azor not survive the explosion in Season 7, while Zethrid would return in Season 8, only to die trying to avenge Azor. However, after Season 7 faced massive backlash for killing off Adam, the writers figured that doing the whole bury your gays thing to the only other gay couple in the show was a really bad idea. Now, even though I kind of figured that something like this happened behind the scenes, I was still shocked to learn that the writers had to be told that killing off 3 of the show's 4 LGBTQ characters, 5 if you count this glorified cutout, was a really bad idea. How does this happen in the late 2010s? Anyways, Azor x Zethrid makes me feel absolutely nothing. The development between them is almost non-existent, writing is only slightly less vague about their status as a couple, and nothing interesting is really done with them. Now, I fully understand that I've talked for way too long about the relationship between these 2 unimportant side characters that not many people seem to care about, myself included, but I feel like this was necessary in order to emphasize just how bad the LGBT rep in Voltron is. That being said, it still leagues better than Shiro x Adam. At least Zethrid and Azor are both actual characters with personalities. At least they share more than a single scene together. At least they had the basic decency to not follow through with killing one or both of them off. At least they didn't act like their relationship was going to be way more important to the series than it actually was. So congratulations, Voltron, you succeeded in doing the absolute bare minimum for this one gay couple. Yay, woohoo, alright, I knew you could do it, hooray, yeah, woo! When I reached Season 2, I was under the impression that the show's endgame couple would be Alora and Keith. At this point in the show, I didn't really care for Keith that much, and if I'm being honest, I'm still largely indifferent towards him, but I was really digging this Lance guy. He was funny. Then I thought to myself, wouldn't it be funny if Aurora ended up with Lance? This kind, refined princess getting together with this goofball Casanova wannabe? That'd make for a fun pairing. I am so sorry. What makes this relationship all the weirder is that Alora never shows any signs of being romantically interested in Lance until late Season 7 when, I kid you not, it looks like she's about to admit her feelings for him. No build-up, no development, no real ship tease on Alora's end, she's just in love with Lance all of a sudden. Following this moment, I assumed that Season 8 would be the point where they seriously develop Lance and Alora's relationship and properly build up to them becoming official. They get together at the end of the season premiere. Well, I guess that'll teach me to expect anything from Voltron Season 8. Damn, what is wrong with this show? Problem number 3. The finale. No! Until they end up in this white void, that's supposed to be the collective consciousness of all realities. I don't know, just go with it. So the stakes are high. All reality is about to end. How does Voltron resolve this? Well, Alora reminds Honerva that she used to be a good person using mind powers, I think? I'm pretty sure Alora never had those, but okay. And Honerva immediately decides that she doesn't want to be evil anymore. Sure, okay, why not? Why start making sense now? Then Allura explains that she and Oneva can something the quintessence in order to fix reality, but it'll also kill them for some reason? I'm sorry, what? Voltron, are you sure that killing off the one black girl in the cast is a good idea? Do you actually not see the unfortunate implications behind doing this? You sure that having the lions sacrifice themselves wouldn't make way more sense thematically and give this moment a stronger sense of finality? No? Okay then, fine. Go off, I guess. What the hell do I know? Man, it's so weird how played straight and clumsy this sacrifice is, when She-Ra would actively deconstruct and subvert the heroic sacrifice trope in its final season. Now that there was a show that ended on a high note, and yet another reason why She-Ra basically invalidates any real reason to ever turn to Voltron. This video is in no way helping to quell the She-Ra Voltron fandom rivalry. The remainder of the finale is seeing Team Voltron all get their perfect happy endings, save for Allura obviously, and this just did nothing for me. Maybe it's because of how baffled and exhausted I was by everything that Season 8 threw at me, but I just couldn't find it in me to feel anything, seeing these characters that I've watched grow/regress across 78 episodes achieve their dreams. Except for Hunk's ending. I kinda felt something in that instance, but that's solely because I'm pretty sure I'm the only person on the planet whose favorite character is Hunk. Leave a comment down below if you too reside in the Hunk bunk. I don't know, is that anything? This is all wrapped up with a Where Are They Now style montage, and I kid you not, I actually burst out laughing at the shot of Shiro's wedding. I still can't get over how this was meant to mean anything to anyone watching. Seriously, who is this man? Needless to say, this wasn't a very good finale. Everything about it just felt so cheap and hollow. That being said, how on earth could anyone say with a straight face that this is anywhere near as awful as that piece of crap ending to Star vs. the Forces of Evil? Yeah, this was a lame note for Voltron to end on, but at least I didn't leave hating most of the characters. At least the main characters actually fought the main villain. At least it doesn't end with the heroes being mass murderers. At least this finale didn't actively undermine everything the show was trying to do with its narrative and main characters. Oh god, I'm gonna have to talk about this piece of crap if I hit 1,000 subscribers. Why do I do these things to myself? While executive meddling was the reason why the LGBT elements were as sparse as they were, it was also the executive stepping in that prevented the writers from killing off fan favorite Shiro, who was supposed to die for real in the season 2 finale. For those of you keeping track at home, that would mean that, save for Shiro's rando hubby, pretty much every gay character in this show was originally meant to die. Again, how does this happen in the late 2010s? Maybe even consider subscribing if you want to hear more of me rambling on about bad seasons of cartoons. Or don't, because I really don't want to watch Star vs. Season 4 again. Yet the likelihood that I'll have to is growing more likely as I slowly get closer to the big 1K milestone. Why do you people have to be so damn supportive? For a while there, I thought that Portal Chase Reloaded was the pinnacle of cheap online Nickelodeon slop. However, if you saw my video covering Portal Chase, you'll remember that way into the video's production, I discovered something worse. This is Nickverse Crossover Chronicles, a series of 4 official Nickelodeon animated shorts released every other week from August 8th to September 19th, 2024, that sees various Nickelodeon characters going on zany slice-of-life adventures. And by various, I mean the exact same 6 to 8 characters. And by zany, I mean horrifying beyond all human comprehension. But enough of my flimsy justification for this video, it's time to put way too much thought into analyzing this garbage made for 3-year-olds. This is where my life is at now. This honestly isn't the type of show that I'd personally seek out for myself, but even for cheap little web shorts, you could tell that there was at least thought put into them. Visuals are at least kind of cute, and they do have their moments every now and then.
I'd give our next guest a pat on the back, but she's recovering from a sword wound. Give it up for Marcy!
I don't know what's funnier, the fact that they got away with that joke, or that this is far more acknowledgement of Marcy's stabbing than we ever got out of Amphibia. My favorite weird visual thing about Nickverse is how Dog's snout is drawn in a way that makes it look like the top of his mouth is always grinning, so it just looks completely bizarre whenever he frowns. It's like he has 2 mouths. Why is Cat Dog such a freak? As for the legacy characters, I'm actually really surprised they didn't include Jimmy Neutron or Danny Phantom here, given how they're amongst the most beloved Nicktoons, and have a far greater tendency to pop up in Nick crossovers when compared to the nostalgic characters that they went with. Although their absence does kind of add up, considering that since they last teamed up with the other Nick characters for a big dumb crossover web series, Danny has gone off to have far more worthwhile adventures in the realm of comics, while Jimmy is currently recovering from another manic depressive episode he had over the guilt he still feels over Sheen getting trapped in space because of his rocket. You guys ever think about how the Jimmy Neutron franchise canonically ends with one of Jimmy's closest friends stranded on an alien world? Like, Sheen has not appeared in anything since then. He's still in space and hasn't seen his friends and family in over a decade. It's actually kind of tragic when you think about it. Anyways, the classic Nick characters include Chucky from Rugrats, who has the distinction of being the only character here to not look like a soulless husk, Cat Dog, who again looks like they want to die, and then there's Zim. What are you doing here, man? Zim is a homicidal killer alien bent on nothing less than complete planetary destruction. Yet here he is, just palling around, being buddies with Lincoln Loud, and I'm just supposed to stand here and pretend there isn't something terribly wrong with this picture? I held this back in the Portal Chase video, but it has to be said now. What the hell is Nickelodeon doing to Zim? Going to amusement parks, helping others, being friendly in any capacity? That's not the murderous Zim I've come to know throughout the maybe 10 episodes of Invader Zim I vaguely remember watching as a kid. Yet time and time again, Nickelodeon keeps playing like he's one of the good guys, and has everyone just suddenly be cool with him as if the heroes of the Nickelodeon multiverse haven't fought Zim multiple times and are fully aware of what this monster is capable of. Need I remind you all of the organ harvesting incident? There was a point where Zim was the Thanos of the Nickelodeon cinematic universe, and now look at him. This is forgiving Orochimaru's level of bullshit. You used to be cool, man. What happened? In all seriousness though, there's an entire generation of kids who probably think that Zim's just paired out from Steven Universe, and I find that genuinely hilarious. And Chucky wins due to the other racers being momentarily stranded in space before returning to... Wait. 1, 2, 3. Oh my god! The animators forgot about Cat Dog. They don't come back for the end of the episode. We don't see them again. Cat Dog is just trapped in space with no way to return. Just like Sheen Estevez. Next, we have SpongeBob wrestles everyone in the ring. There are also nematodes, who are apparently the only fish that reside in whatever nonsense world this is, as well as a bunch of OCs who don't remotely fit in with the vaguely anime-esque art style, including this one pig with glasses. I hate him. What do you mean Cat Dog wins? None of their feats remotely compare to Mikey's, let alone SpongeBob's. Anyways, Sandy shows up and murders Cat Dog, winning her the match, which is a much more believable outcome, considering that Sandy should roughly compare to SpongeBob via power scaling. Anyways, Nate's banned for being a public nuisance, but that doesn't stop him from trying to get in via tired gags that probably wouldn't do anything for even the toddlers that this was made for, and there's that pig again! What is his deal? It's honestly kind of an anticlimactic note to end this show on. Seriously, what was up with that pig guy? Hey, this is Future Sawkman here. So while editing, I actually noticed something. Once again, Cat Dog isn't present at the end of the episode. The animators forgot about them again. Seriously, why is it always Cat Dog? It's bad enough that they're societal outcasts who get the crap beaten out of them on a daily basis, star in a mediocre ass show that wound up getting completely upstaged by SpongeBob, got cut from Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, and have left zero cultural impact beyond a meme associated with that freak who makes pedo art of the Powerpuff Girls, but this web series just does not give a damn about them at all. I'm telling you, man, Cat is one bad day away from becoming the Joker. When will this poor creature's suffering end?
When a cat poops, what does it come out of the dog's mouth? That's some kind of living hell. That's some kind of living hell, Brian.
Yet here I am, a man in his late 20s, spending an unnecessary amount of time and effort talking about it. This web series that's adjacent to Cocomelon. Maybe this is why I'm never invited to family gatherings. I'll see you all in 2025, when I'll hopefully make videos on things actually worth talking about. Knowing me, probably not. I need to get a better hobby.